Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's inaugural meeting of Planning for the South. I'm pleased to be speaking to you about that big post. As chairman of the Western Coast Council and Planning for the South, it's my duty to bring us together, where necessary, so as to reach appropriate planning facilities. And substitutes. I invite each of you to introduce yourself. And can we go around from here?
Thank you, Chair. And so Cambridge, where I'm going to be to the council and the teams. We have also sorry, dates. Every part of the regular groups for I'm sitting up in my part of care to keep you back.
In sitting on planning for 50 years and I'm chair of the women governance.
I've been on the side committee and previously about one very serious.
What's the next one?
I would consider third apologies for being made and stop road works and second. I've been on planning which is I think.
Hi, I'm Raymond Connolly. I'm the pastor. Chair of the town council. I'm Andrew Melvin, student. Good evening, my name is James Roger. I'm also the managing manager of our company. Controlling Stephen Parker. So let's make a start. We are to the agenda.
Chair, before we begin, can I make an observation, please? Would that be all right? I've got two. One is that planning government, we did agree that where the agenda was structurally about requesting planning doctors, that the planning meeting can be held between them. So that's one. The other one, it's an observation I've made. I'm very disappointed that all our planning committees are being chaired and vice chaired by men. And one of the requests I would like to put in is that we ask democratic services to provide us training on gender.
Very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Item 1. Public services, the name of Secretary members.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from.
Are there any declarations of interest? Mr. Stone?
Yes, I'm objecting to public equal to. The.
Item 3 minutes, Mr. Matthew Douglas will be present. The next meeting of the full, you know, society and children married. We agree those minutes. And say, good evening. Thank you very much. Charities announcements. Use an ongoing plan of being taking place. We will return to the question during the from July onwards, except for occasions where the agenda consists of applications from the floor in the tax area. In which case, the meeting would have members of the public are permitted to form broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficient term of the meeting of being effective. Only those who become registered in line with the rules. I request we not to on their advantages. This meeting is being read on the council's YouTube channel. Therefore, all those speaking, please utilize the remainder days when doing evacuation instruction will be given by office. Please ensure that any device is switched out. They are on to start. Do you have any previous time? I move on to item 6, to agree with the other plan. Is it something or any of the
Access on the goes. Only the question, straight. Item 2 is illustrated to again. I will let's go back to what it's not use. This idea illustrates the virus. That is the access to the apartments. It's not around but access around. Some storage. So, well, It's the way it's founded in the first hour, and we've got two distinct. Separated between building out. Very structured, apartments. We did do that. That's straight to second web one. Third one. This one showed by that. The other action of the yeah. Yeah. By the streets. The whole text shows where in the report recommended subjects. What subjects was like the detail liability of presence in each part of the application. Also, we still have to use like this is a pound.
Thank you very much. And we have this regarding the sun, the age of the out the street of the rest.
My name is Adam Roberts in the studio of the City Architects, and I'm the lead project manager and architect for the. We are seeking recognition to converting the city vacant Tesco building into 3 single units. The building has 2 exits, one on High Street, which is on Abington Street, and the other is on the right. The front part of the building. I stand with the green stone, the building itself has been vacant for a long period of time. And we let the materials stay. One of the reasons for who happened everything is previously it has though the whole ground floor and their main retail, and the rear of the building was the delivery areas and the upper floor of the storage unit. The ground floor unit will be split into beauty, shops, cafes, and we believe by doing this, We will increase the trade of our streets, we bring the factories coming forward. The units we have designed and fortified. We work closely with the planning department using the Fiat service and work with the planning officer to amend the drawings throughout this application to satisfy the requirement of the local authority. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight, and we hope that will take into account our application and heavily talking about the.
Are there any questions from this?
Citizen in the offices report that deliveries will only take place for the activities will take. Won't be and would there be a kind of structure to some activities?
Thank you. We've taken we have got a drawing and then the as you can see, on the windings, there's the access map area, and this is where Tesco usually do their delivery before. So all we have to do is stand by the delivery by the red box, they will deliver straight into the communal area, and then carry on from there. There's enough space on the side. Once the vehicles parked there, there's no vehicle possible, so there's no.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any limitations on the time? Because we see what can be transactional from those three sites there. And also, what sort of times we're going to do this? And also, things like if they were else to be something, obviously things like if we usually the container that's.
Thank you. So with the and retail units, so what the food restaurants that would go in there, that would have a perfect kind of application. So at the moment, this is the vision of my clients to go forward. So
See what it was actually.
Yes, bringing back this new concern point, at one point, this is that if you have the restaurants on, to non-smell, you have to be just the, we're trying to do that area. Just the planning is okay, which we are happy with some important before. You already have people who we have retail, because also all the centers there, mostly and talking about. So, do you agree with the report that you will have some further work to do, or are you going to have some work done from one unit, so it is already ready for a restaurant? Because it's always very difficult to make sure and so on. So what are your view on that matter? Because you did mention the pizzeria, so it's not on the plan and a bit more complicated.
and when I said that was my client's
Yeah.
vision as a use it as a pizzeria, it's more like loosely. So again, if we was to put in, say for example, a pizzeria, again, we would do the planning application in order to tell the company, so it's not going to turn straight into a pizzeria.
I'll come back to the officers after the question in case there anything else to like. Councillor Bellbridge.
Thank you, Chair. The accommodation above the apartments, what basis are they going to be occupied, and is there any social housing included in these?
The residential units upstairs are for the rental market, and we haven't got any social housing included, and hence that's why we did the liability statement. So at the time, when we looked at the financing and producing the extensions in the area, and we offset it with the values of the properties, it just wasn't viable to provide social housing.
Thank you. Councillor Butley.
Yeah, in respect to the 30 residential units, I'm unclear as to the parking situation. Is there car parking spaces allocated for development?
We haven't, the development we're doing is a car park redevelopment due to that it's so close to the high street. We did have an option where we did put in disabled parking places, which was located on the ground floor, where the commercial area was. However, Highways wasn't happy with it, so we amended the application and we was told to take out the parking spaces we had for disabled.
So another question.
Yeah, I think so. So where is it intended that the residents will park?
So we're doing a car park redevelopment. So there's no car park spaces allocated for the units.
Are there any further questions from the applicants? No? Thank you very much. Would you return to your seat, please?
Thank you.
Would you like to come back and have a vote?
That's pretty good, Chair, if I may. In a particular order, the element was mentioned about parking, residents or lack of parking. This is something that the government has feeding it for since they're living in centres that the government doesn't always require parking for flats. So if it isn't a sustainable area, which this is quite sustainable on Hampton, so that's why that application came about. I know I mentioned also was mentioned about the parking or deliveries to the retail units. As part of the approved plan condition on page 43, the last point on there is a delivery management plan. And that just picked up on page 39 with the highway or the highway safety elements. That was something that came out during the assessment of the application. But the applicants came with the delivery plan and package delivery plan. So effectively, it's unit one was delivered as being 7 hours. That was the time slot they had. Then you two perhaps had a site break, and then they came with the second hour, and so on to unit 3. So with this option of potential of conflicts with the lines back here, I think what's fundamental that point is worth noting that what all the frees they had delivering and then it was Tesco as well. So let's kind of bring things to a more regularised standard by having a link with management and with the actual approval element and the decision on the application. And then with regard to the social housing, I want to mention again, the applicant as well, that as part of the actual viability assessment of the application, that was looked at in terms of delivering the affordable plans and more social housing. And what came out of the discussion was we learned the contribution of what we learned. So of £7,000 secured up from section 1 of 6 was preferable to the affordable development, bearing in mind is that small units have been created within this complex. And I think that was it. Chair, I'm more than happy to go back and leave it on this.
Were there any further questions from officers? Oh. Started.
I just apologise for missing one about the delivery management plan. When the word delivery is used by politicians in almost every context to mean almost anything, I didn't really actually was about delivery itself, real ones.
No, well, we've all got something, haven't we? Okay, before I start the debate, though, Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Do you mind if I say here? Okay. I put in an objection to this planning application for a number of reasons. One is I think it's overdevelopment of the site. The second one is, I think we need to have more regard to the vision we have for the town centre, the vision we have in the corporate plan, and we have to ask questions about how this application delivers against that vision and against what we say in the corporate plan. For me, there's a lot of missing information. I would want to see the evidence that we need more small housing units in the town centre. We already have a huge number. What we are lacking is balance, and what we want to see in the town centre is a family-friendly environment. Families seem to be being disregarded, and the needs of families seem to be being disregarded. So I would like to see the evidence of why we need more such tiny little units in the town centre. That's one issue. The other issue, which is even more serious in a way, is that my residents, including school-aged children, are telling me they don't feel safe in our town centre. There's just been a report published from a school that has been where the children have been surveyed about where they feel safe and where they don't feel safe. One of the areas where they don't feel safe is along Abington Street. Now, I take that really seriously. So when you look at the crime statistics for this area, the figures are going like that. If you look at what is being said nationally about what's going on with crime in Northampton, you would,
How do you relate these issues to this particular application? I haven't done the policy reference here. We have a recommendation for approval from officers who refer to the policies that apply to the determination of this application.
what I'm trying to say, Chair, is that this application militates against the vision we have for the town centre, which is of mixed and cohesive communities, balanced communities. This further unbalances the residential communities living in the town centre. It is not addressing housing needs in my ward, which is for larger units accommodating families, and it isn't addressing the contextual issues, which are really serious. We have really serious issues to do with residents not feeling safe in their own town centre and where they live.
Let's stick with the planning issues in respect to the particular applications before us. Hold on. I'm going to the officer to respond.
Yes, thank you, John, through you. Just in terms of the potential obscene issue of crime issues. On page 35 of the agenda, the response to the application, we'll concentrate on the whole application. And other than advising issues such as type of doors, backstory, new evidence, proposal deliveries, and the amiable service between Raise Garden, that's as far as the police haven't raised any issue or any concerns over that. And that would have been the opportunity for the police to comment on those issues. Had that been from their view, but a concern of this type of development going into the 6th town centre. Thank you.
Are there any other to which we use that? Yes,
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in terms of strategic objectives, so we have a recently adopted Northampton local plan, and I've actually got the key objectives from the plan in front of me. So their objective 2 is housing, so delivering housing and homes that residents can afford. And objective 3 is about supporting the town centre. It's about regeneration of the town centre, and that regeneration includes delivering housing within the town centre. And actually, in terms of safer streets and town centres, one of the ways you make them safer is by bringing people into the residential units into the heart of the town centre. It's actually, there is evidence that when you don't have the residents in the town centre, that's actually part of the problem. They become ghost towns at night, in effect, and the way to address that is actually to have lots of residential, in the town centre. So in officers' view, this development is actually goes quite a long way to meeting, we would argue, the strategic objectives of the Northampton local plan in terms of regeneration of town centre and and in terms of bringing housing to the town centre. And so just as a final point, because obviously members will need to consider all these issues in the planning balance. It is not uncommon on locations like this that are right in the heart of the town centre to have car proposals. So if we were dealing with a proposal like this at somewhere in one of the villages or less accessible, obviously it'd be a completely different matter, but it's acceptable solely because of the location, which is right in the middle of the town centre. And obviously this site really is right in the middle of Northampton town centre.
Thank you so much. We're moving to the debate now. Who would like to speak?
I'm going.
It's not a debate with you, councillor.
No, I'm sorry. I haven't finished my presentation,
No, I'm asking you to stop speaking now. I'm turning to the debate.
but I haven't finished my presentation and I didn't take up.
I
3 minutes.
didn't call for a presentation. I allowed you to speak and we've had a response given to you from what you
But
said.
I haven't finished what I wanted to say.
No, that's right. Would you like to finish?
Thank you. Some of the other points I wanted to make is that if we have standards, I don't see how in any given application we can waive them. So I'm not happy that we in this report are accepting a lower standard. So the distance between sightlines should be 21 metres, shouldn't it? And we're accepting it's going to be 17.4. I find that completely unacceptable. One of the issues with high density dwellings is the pressure they're putting on other services, like doctors, dentists and schools. And I think that is really serious. We've got huge issues in the town centre with people not being able to access doctors, surgeries and dentists. And this is just going to exacerbate all those issues. And I think it's something that really needs looking at. If this was a development that had 15, say, much larger dwellings where families could also live, then I wouldn't find it so objectionable.
Mr. Roger?
I was just going to say that there is a full sale being paid, so there will be infrastructure contributions towards the town centre infrastructure.
Thank you. Moving to the debate. We get from
Would you like me to withdraw?
No. I'm just saying. Who's going first?
I can have a.
Councillor Livingston.
Yes.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I read with great interest the report. Two things. I do believe because building is derelict, it is more the antisocial behavior and so on is more likely to be the derelict building. And also, if we recreate the beauty of the building and having looked at your drawing with the back and the front, it doesn't, I was afraid that it might jar the higher back and so on. But having looked at you, I think it might improve Northampton. As you can see, I am French and I lived for a long time in Paris. And I promise you that is what you have in a big city. I think it's great to see that you have a shopping at the bottom, shops at the bottom. My only concern is if there is, because on the planning, you make some remark about if there is food, retail and so on, you might need further things. I would have loved to see one unit with more things if it is a food retail, so like that it's not retrofitted. So I don't know if we can have that on the planning, so to have some condition already, if there is a food outlet, what are the rules, where it is, so like that. I think it will make the development much more coherent, but otherwise I think it's a very good report and I will, if I will in the committee, but I will be very happy to propose that we go for planning. Also with observance.
Yes, thank you, through chair. those would be condition number 7, sorry, on page 44.
Yes.
That relates to the very sensitive nature of possible odour on depot uses. Obviously, that those details need to be agreed. So whilst it may or may not be a takeaway use in there or a restaurant use, that will allow us at least to insist on the police to ensure that the actual applicants or the owner, the price of the unit has compiled with it so that we can retrieve those details, so you don't get and glue stuck everywhere when we can at least manage that and control that.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I think that was a recommendation to approve.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to second that motion, Chair.
Councillor Pritchard.
Very, very quickly, and I appreciate the colleague's recommendation, but I must admit, looking at this particular development, I'm actually quite impressed, particularly with the garden area between the two locations itself. And isn't it great to actually get a derelict building in the centre of a city to actually come in with regards to retail units and also obviously accommodation. And once again, I would also support my colleagues with regards to the recommendation.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hack.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize for being late, I've got a head in time. I must say that just for the record, I'm a ward member for the council board, so just for the record, I've come here with open mind, listen to both sides of the argument, and I have made my mind. One of the concerns I had was that I have no issues with the number of commercial units, 3 commercial units, but the number of residential units, 30. It seems, I mean, if you look at the size of the building, it seems one too many. You know, as Councillor Stone said, you know, if we went for maybe 50 to 20 instead of 30, that was not the concern I had. But listening to the presentation and listening to the agent, Stanley Hassan, the concern has been sort of I'm a bit eased. So, but on this one, I'm not fully I cannot wholeheartedly support this application, but I reserve my right to vote either way. Thank you.
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Councillor Putnam.
Yeah, I think that obviously the regeneration of Northampton is very important, and I believe there's going to be more applications along Abington Street for flats and shops and a cafe culture. And I think what is proposed in this building is quite impressive, keeping the art deco at the top, so I would support it.
Councillor Dandridge.
Yeah, I do admit that it would be nice to have seen 1 or 2 at least larger dwellings within that 4-family use, but I understand the mathematics that's been done and obviously presented with a view to providing social housing. It's a question of economics, and if this is what required to save this shop and turn it into what looks like a very smart addition to the high street, I think it's certainly got my support anyway.
Before I move to the vote, do you wish to speak?
Yes, just one thing, because somebody mentioned the garden in between. If you have some condition that the garden, still garden and maintenance of the garden, because it's very important. Maybe I didn't see it, maybe I overlooked at it. But I didn't see any condition about the maintenance of the garden. And I think that should be really added, because it's such an important part of how that building will work. And in being, is that me? Sorry if I missed it.
That's a good answer.
No, it's not, you haven't missed it. It's very valid point. There is condition on there relating to looking and service work and so that's something that we can, well, that is the very favourable application.
That's it, propose that with adding that condition, that there is a maintenance, or something about the garden. Because I do think it's adds so much to the livable space.
Second that, Chair.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to just clear it up, actually, obviously, Ian came late into the debate,
Yeah.
is he allowed to vote on this?
Yes, I don't advise.
Right, current proposal that's been seconded. That's what
Well, I haven't sort of been in the debate so far. Just the brief then, first you do a double take on that. But apart from delivery, the word of the month is 15 minutes cities. Where everything you want is within 15 minutes, and within 15 minutes of this, there's a railway station, a bus station, a theatre, shops, restaurants, a hospital. The young are driving less and less, there is evidence, than the young in the future. So it sounds a bold move to go parking free, but I think it's okay, if not, in fact, a step in the right direction. And the safety one's been answered, the way to improve safety is have people.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a proposal that's been seconded with an additional. So, all those in favour, please show. Those against? No. Are you abstaining? Thank you. Right, item 9. That's.
Thank you, Chair. This is 99 new dwelling in addition to 242 Hazeldean Road, two-storey terrace house in the side garden in this house. It's the location and the aerial view. And we have block and the location part. So it's still dwelling that's slightly down from number 242. So back and down from 242 to reduce the visual impact. Yes, you can see the dwelling setback from number 242, see the rear projected part of it, set down back to reduce the visual impact. Single story elements will adversely affect the neighbouring property because it's not only 3 meters of depth. It's also sufficient separation from the rear to avoid affecting the house to the rear. Proposed parking, you can see there 4 parking spaces to the rear. That's 2 spaces for proposed dwelling and 2 spaces for dwelling number 242. Which is an amendment to the original proposal, which did show the parking to the front. So I haven't got angry safety concerns, which are going to have this on the front lines. Look, I've already have confirmed that this is a possible development by all this stage. It's been improved to the existing arrangement because there is now at least one video to explain what going on previously. At the side elevation, this again shows the setback and set down to reduce the visual impact of the street scene. Any further extensions would be permitted development as a condition that would remove that so that we go further enlarge this without permission. To the floor plan, you can see there's 3 bedrooms overall. The damage to this meets the nationally described space standards for the overall floor space for the floor area of each of the bedrooms and also for the roof of bedrooms. Take some photograph. This is the existing site, so it's the right hand of those 2 dwellings would have this further dwelling attached to the side, so making from terrace down into 3 terraced houses.
This photo here shows the neighbouring property across the side streets and the two block A, you know, see, this was previously approved addition to that house, so that comes very close to the back edge of the side road. This will be reflecting that sighting, if not the actual design of it. So it's completely in keeping with the character of the area to do this. Final photographs, these just show the side and the rear of the site, so you can see where the burning would go to the side of the back of the building. So the conclusion is that this would be in keeping with the character of the area, would not affect the use to adjoining occupiers, and there's no adverse indication both for highway safety, so it's recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. And we have an objector to speak to us, Natalie Westgate, who's a local resident. To the microphone, please. Please speak when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and councillors. I'm speaking as a local resident on behalf of a number of residents concerned by the application, but I'm also a qualified senior planner. I've got over 20 years experience of dealing with these sorts of applications. The proposed way will be acting in the character of the joining properties and the streets in. There's an increase of massive, which is close to the footpath, which would be detrimental to the character of the area. But when you couple that with the dwelling opposite, which was actually designed more to look like an extension rather than a house just squeezed in the plot by this case, you're changing completely the cramped appearance of the estate. The height of the dwelling is not in keeping with the adjoining properties. The design with too much brick is at odds. The roof lights and rooms in the beds is not characteristic of the area. I would set a precedent in the estate. It's too narrow, and because of that, it appears a squash poor design, in my opinion. Due to the lack of space, which is further demonstrated by the fact that there's no bins and bikes proposed for the existing bin, and only 2 rather than 3 bins which are actually used in Northampton for the proposed. So question where there'd actually be space for the electronic charging points. The proposed parking spaces would cause undue concern for highway safety. The proposed high fence to the rear, the highway officer admits that it fails feasibility study. And I would question the dangerous of if there's a vehicle parked at the proposed 242, but then another vehicle comes on the new dwelling, or indeed if they're both parked, you've got to go over the land of the new dwelling. So if people parked on the new dwelling, you couldn't access your car to get out of the existing parking situation. So also it being on a close bend where you've got a corner junction there with one opposite, you have vans at the moment and cars that are double back. So it would cause problems with an already existing on-street parking situation. So we recommend refusal. If it was recommended approval, we'd suggest a condition for reasonable construction hours, given the you've got 6 residents, you've got myself, I've got a toddler over the road, so we would be concerned.
Your 3 minutes.
That was it.
Now we have Pat Dooley, who's the agent for the applicant to speak for us.
I just want to a few points that was mentioned by the executives of the report. Few points that you raised by the objector. How we keeping the scale, etc., with the area, as you see from the street scene, it's probably not detailed there, but the width of this property is actually more or less the same or similar in width to the adjoining pair of semis. So the scale, get the proportions of the building, the window scales, etc. And the appearance of the frontage with the half ranger is all in keeping exactly with what's there at the moment, so. And with roof lights, that's something that anybody can do in any of the houses, there's no restriction on that as such, roof spaces there, and we utilise them. The other points are the bin storage, well, there's plenty of room for bin stores in there, so we've also provided bin storage show the existing property can get out through to the highway for the back with the bins, as well as the new property, so that's done. Electrical vehicle charging points, that's very straightforward for us to accommodate with the parking bays. And the parking spaces provided are actually compliant with the size of today, not the narrow garage function parking bays. And these are tandem spaces, so you won't be blocking anybody in, you won't be blocking your own cells in, which is unfortunate. One thing the officer mentioned was that we previously did have parking at the front of the site, in front of the existing property adjacent. That was in fact accepted by the highway officer and not objected to. It's a case that when the council raised an objection to that parking, we tried to overcome that, or tried to address the issue at the time and moved the 4 parking spaces, 2 for the new and 2 for the existing, to the rear of the property. So we dealt with that. And again, the highway officer has come back and said that it is an improved, whilst it's not the ideal, it is improved what's there at the moment, and he was happy and satisfied with it. So there are 2 instances where we satisfied the highway officer. Overall, the property on the opposite side was originally an extension to the property on the opposite corner, and that was actually then granted permission to convert it to a dwelling. Now that is totally out of character, in my opinion, to the street scene. It's not quite visible on that photograph, but ours, I believe, is in character and keeping, and I hope that you'll follow the officer's recommendation and support the application.
Thank you. If you remain there, there's questions from members. So do we have any questions in the room? Richard?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point. When you actually build on an adjacent building, do you actually put another wall down there, or do you use the existing wall that's already existing there?
It is a provision actually for the warranty providers, you actually build an independent wall, because they take the view that if you were to knock that house down, that hasn't got a sidewalk. So that is, we typically build another wall, I think, adjacent to that wall.
Any further questions, Mr. Brewer?
Could I, thank you. Could I ask a question? Where is the boundary of that property in relation to the road?
Boundary at the top. So, as you look to the side plan, you see there's about a metre. Well, if you look at it, you haven't got the property opposite, but we've got about, I think, is it around 900 at the back and around, around 900 mil 3 foot to the boundary base, which is not dissimilar to what's directly opposite. And the our properties down this particular area, which do come close to the footpath as well. It's not onto the footpath there.
No, it's on a bend, is it?
Yes, set well back, if you can see on the, if you look on the plan there, it's set well back, so it don't have any, there's no, nothing at all in the way of visibility to highway.
So that pavement will be there, will it?
Yes, yeah, it's all inside that area. There is one around.
Are there any further questions, Mr. Brewer?
Okay, thank you.
Officers, will you come back in?
I think Mr. Dooley has covered many of the points that were raised. Just to confirm that the design of the officer's view is that that is in keeping with the character of the area, the set down, set back does reduce the visual governance of it. I just have to confirm there is clear access to the existing number 2.2, so any bids could come around the parking space. So that's not a concern. And construction hours, if that was felt by members to be appropriate, that would certainly be an additional condition to control. Sorry, I may.
Yeah.
Chairman. Sorry, obviously we don't know. We were just whispering in terms of the point raised about construction hours. We do on normally larger developments impose the construction management condition due to the location on the corner and the sort of limited plot size, I think we could justify construction management condition being added if members wish to do so in this case. And that construction management condition would go into details to basically specifically try and minimise disturbance from construction.
Right. Questions to officers? Councillor Swift?
Sorry, it sounds rather pedantic, it's a question for our lawyer. It was called by Councillor Sparkle, and he hasn't come here, nor has he dared to substitute to read. And I thought with our constitution, if that happened, it will just fall with officer advice without any further discussion. Is that my understanding of the constitution?
That's great.
So we should go to the move without any discussion, further discussion. I'm sorry, I sound rather pedantic, and especially somebody came to speak, but that is a constitution. If the councillor doesn't come, or if you reason his reason and explain why it is a conference, it should not be in front of us. Thank you.
I believe that was overruled at the last democratic and governance meeting. No, because consideration was given to the fact that councillors calling things in could be ill, or could be on holiday, or there would be mitigating circumstances, and the point was made that it's a councillor's board duty to enable their residents to come and speak to these kind of proposals. So I think it's well in keeping with what was agreed.
Well, sorry, thank you, Chairman, but I didn't say that Councillor Sparkle should be present. He should have left something, and that is the thing. We didn't ask the councillor, sometime you have something, or you have, but we have no explanation while he's not there, and I quite agree with you. But we have to allow the councillor argument, but that is part of our policy. And I think I am pretty sure we debated that point, but I would like to solicit to thank you.
Councillor Bandridge? Yeah, I mean, what Councillor Stone was saying that under special circumstances, this can be changed if that is correct. Then there seems to be no special circumstances. There's no message from anyone, any reason for him not attending or anything else. So that would seem to blow that one out the water.
If I could just, thank you, Chair. I actually spoke to Anderson yesterday, and he said he would like to take this meeting.
Then we continue with the debate to pass the time.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I can clarify this point in the Constitution as it currently stands. Members are expected to attend and speak at a planning committee meeting that considers a planning application they have called in. If a member cannot attend, they should endeavour to ask another member to attend on their behalf, or failing that, submit a written statement to Democratic Services no later than 24 hours before the start of the meeting. Any statements received will be read out by the Democratic Services Officer at the invitation of the Chair. An application that's been called in will still be considered by a planning committee if the member does not attend or submit a written statement in lieu of the meeting. So based on that advice, you may still consider the application before you receive it.
Could I ask the other question? Thank you. Have we got a policy on infilling? And have we got any guidance about where it's acceptable and where it isn't?
It's a very few Chair, if I may. There are policies that relate to creating new residential properties and so on, but it directly speaks to infilling or habitation infilling within that policy itself or title. You need to consider everything around. You consider all developments within the area as well as the overall area. Then we're going to move that back then for backland development. So you certainly considering around within that proposal. There's 1, 2, 3, however many ordinance or operation of commercial use of our impacts or in character to the surrounding area. So to answer your question, councillor, there isn't anything that specific speaks to infill. There are policies that we cover that concept that must be considered by officers. And I think Andrew, you mentioned the following, everything we made in the balance, and we're really this application accepted on this one.
I'm not directly answer the question, but if I were to assist members in their determination, what really sticks out with this application is the identical plot across the road, and it's pretty much identical in terms of size and scale of the plot. The fact that there's a precedent already for a separate unit, so in effect, it's very difficult to argue against the principle of development. One could look at it and argue, is the design acceptable or not? But I think in officer's opinion, we'd say the design proposed dwelling is arguably a better design than that which exists across the road, because what was built across the road was designed as an extension and later converted into a separate dwelling house. So, as I said, I do think if you wish, you could add an extra condition for a construction management plan that may go some way to address concerns of local residents, but it can be very hard to refuse this application given the precedent across the road.
Councillor Parker.
I propose we accept on the device with the addition of the ban. Sorry, I was going to say that. The condition, sorry, for the management plan. Thank you.
Can I have a second?
Yeah, just pick up on one point that James Rogers made. Is people understand that we decide each application is so on merit, so we cannot refer to the development of the road. So by setting a precedent, just because can we justify somebody else created similar to this design, we should allow this development to go ahead.
Mr. Roger.
So one of the things you're looking at is the impact of this proposal on the character and appearance of the street scene. So effectively, the importance, I think, of the dwelling across the road is, so one of the things you may or may not find that, so sometimes on the corner sites, closing of the gap can be a concern. It's difficult to justify that here when the opposite side of the road, the gap's already been closed. So if for instance, you had a different piece of the road where the other side didn't have a property up to the edge of the road, you'd have a stronger argument dealing with that application on its merits than you would have here, where the gap's been closed, you've already got a property the other side of the road, very close to the pavement edge. The proposal here, yes, it's a different design, but in terms of the plot size and effectively what's being sought in terms of the dwelling, there is some similarities between the two. But you're right, we should deal with each application on its merits. It's just sorry, you loathe to say this, but if this, so you went to appeal, planning inspector is going to stand on site, look at the application site, and they are going to put weighting on 248. It is inevitable. So I just think in this particular case, it's hard not to look at the dwelling across the road and put some weighting on that when you're considering this application. But yes, you need to deal with it on its merits. But I think when you're considering the planning balance here, it's very difficult not to put quite a lot of weighting on 248.
We have a proposal before us, with an amendment to include an additional condition. Councillor Pritchard. The seconded proposal, moving it to the vote. Does anyone wish to speak first? Councillor Barker.
Still for the record, when we say that there is no objection from highways, does that mean that highways have said they do not object or haven't said anything?
Mr. Roger.
So I take that point as the case, so highways
said they don't object, they don't provide further clarification that it was actually an improvement in highway safety, because it's now got all the visibility split they have done.
Thank you very much. All those in favour of the revised recommendation, please show. Those against? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Item 10, the central library in Cemetery County, King County.
He's not planning on teaching in front of us because he don't work. That's the only reason. Because I didn't do it, it wasn't the yeah, you too. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So the application central library is for the buildings consent for works of repair. The long details of which are set out on the screen. It's a grade 2 listed building located right in the middle of the town centre. And the reason we have the board committee is because Worksville County Council is the applicant. So those meeting screen. Review. These are some photos indicating the various elements that the building is suffering at the moment that the application seeks to address. Slide 3 showing the external areas of the building. The front, cupola, the rear, in terms of the guttering and window details. The full details of the works proposed after section 8 of my report. The detailed survey was carried out of the exterior and interior. Some of the exterior frailties in building are causing damage inside through leakage. The works were agreed as being necessary by the conservation team, cause no harm, and have significant public benefit, which will sustain, protect, and enhance heritage assets. The application is therefore recommended that the committee grants listed building consent to secure the essential maintenance of this listed building, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It's one of ours and it's falls in my room as well, and I propose that we take over from the vote and I propose that we accept the recommendation on this.
Thank you. We have a seconder. Oh, was that Councillor Pritchard?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak for or move to the vote? Right, all those in favour, please show. Would you mind? Thank you. Item 11, King Street, Northampton.
Thank you. We're going to change these from dwelling house to a house of multiple occupation for instance. The application is before committee this evening. Stone. The terrace dwelling is within the Tube Ports Conservation Area, but there are no works proposed to the external part of the building, so no change to the external building. No objections have been received from residents of the area to the application. So in terms of location of houses, would like to know, Military Road is to the west of the site. There's a secondary school with communal community use at the end of Hall Street. To the east is sorry, Mexico Terrace and Red School to the north, and Oxford Street to the south. So there's some photographs of the front of the property, street scene. The proposal is considered in terms of policy H03 and the council's housing multiple occupation supplementary planning document, which sets a maximum limit of portion of HMOs within a 50-metre radius of an application site. And in this, so with the radius shown on the plan before you, so in this instance, after this proposal to go ahead, 7.6% of properties within that radius would be housed in multiple occupation. So studying the plans, all room sizes are above the minimum size. Bedrooms and shared facilities identified in the house in multiple occupation SPD, as well as the housing multiple occupation amenities facility and management standards document that is used by the council's licensing team. The drawings show that there is a refuge and cycle parking provided. Parking within this location is permit parking, and therefore only properties that give permits through the council parking service are able to park in the streets. There are no parking spaces provided with the proposal, and but due to its available location in relation to the town centre, but there's law enforcement near the race course and local supermarkets, shops, and also bus services. The proposal is seen to be a sustainable location and accordance with the advice in the SPD. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions set out in the reports.
Thank you very much. And we have Mr. Pat, do you, anybody who's out to speak?
Hi, good evening, speaking for this application and support of it. The application has been forwarded by Councillor Stone on the basis of it's been lots of family home. I don't quite understand the whole principle of this totally, in as much as Northampton invested a huge amount of money in having an independent survey carried out, study of HMOs a couple of years ago, where it was decided that the area concentration should be reduced from 15% down to 10% to control the amount of HMOs in a particular area. So this was adopted and is part of the planning policy. So most of the agents have to work these policies. So as you've been told, it's 7.6% well in. If we take on board the issue of family home, we're starting to dictate how property should be, which is not what government want. We don't want private housing, council housing, this out there. HMO people are who want to rent these are entitled to be in wherever area to create this mixed community, which is what the government is encouraging. So it's fully in compliance with the relevant policy. And we have got this mixed community and it's controlled by the area conservation. Regarding the park, it's only a 4-person HMO care. So that's not actually much different to what a normal family would be in size who would live in this property. So we're not looking at a huge intensity of increasing population of the property. Parking is permit controlled, and the Highway Officer has confirmed that this is, because of this, only an amount of permits will be issued, of course. But as also explained, it is in a sustainable location with public park, town centre within walking distance, supermarkets, etc. So it's a very sustainable location. And I consider that you'll follow, well, I hope you'll follow the officer's recommendation and support this through the application. With any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Dooley? Yes. Yeah, Mr. Conway?
Maybe you can help me out there, or maybe it might be Andy. It says that the local area neighbourhood plans that landlords have got a duty, should provide provision for parking. These have been adopted by West Midlands Council, but nothing's been done. It's a sustainable location, as you said, but the documents I've been reading saying that there should be provision for parking by landlords.
Well, HMO, I think the officer would want to confirm this, but basically within the HMO policies, it stipulates that should you not provide parking, that you must be within a certain distance of bus stops, shopping facilities, supermarkets, etc., to be acceptable without parking, and that's part of the policies. It's if you haven't got parking provided, I'm sure the officer will confirm that for you.
We'll come back to the officer when we finish the questions.
Thank you.
You've got another question? Councillor Conway?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Richard? No?
Thank you, Chair.
No, still questions?
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yes, with regards to a little bit of education, will there be a requirement for fire alarm or some sort of fire warning system be put into these?
Yes, the part of the operating aid, once you've got the planning permission, then you have to then apply for HMO licence. That's covered by the housing sector. And they control then the facilities provided, the provide suite facilities to vehicles. So the fire alarms and everything like that, fire doors, etc., all have to be provided for their community licence.
Is there any responsibility on the tenants to maintain the garden space? Because you can imagine sometimes
One particular, there's always issues known to others about HMO properties for this, that's what the problem. It's all about management. Unfortunately, you know, we multiple providers, they do manage properties well, they maintain them. The fire alarms are maintained by them, and they make sure that the rubbish isn't everywhere. It's purely down to management, which is out of my control, but as I say, people I worked before to manage the properties very well.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. White?
Am I going to speak?
No, we're still on the question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, we forgot the name. Mr. White? Was it an outstanding answer? Will be honest, be.
To do with parking.
Yeah.
Well,
yes, there is, within the SPD, it starts off from a position that parking should be provided on site, so when that cancelling. But as Mr. Dooley said, you then move to a position where if it can't be provided, then you go through sustainability criteria, and Mr. Dooley correctly identified exactly the issues that are put in the report. But you're talking about walking distances to public transport, to shops, and in this case as well, I think that you know, a very large amenity space in the main those sustainability criteria that make it important in terms of not supposed to have cars. In addition, I think the provision of cycle parking is essential, which is shown in the plan. So you could get back to car free developments. Cycle parking is provided.
Thank you. I put in an objection to this application because within legal family housing, but it's also in an area where there are very, very many flats and highlands. And one of the issues for me and for my residents is that we don't have enough enforcement agency or capacity to really bottom out how many illegal high-lows are operating in this area. And I know that private sector housing is great, a great long list, over 1,000 requests to investigate illegal high-lows. So I would like to ask the committee to defer this decision pending on more information. So the kind of information I think that we require to make a sound judgment is about how many investigations in this area are pending regarding illegal HIMOs. I think another question that needs answering is where the existing HIMOs that are legal are in relation to this particular proposal. Are they next door, for example? I think we need to ask. This is an area, I'm sorry to say this, Chair, but this is an area of really high crime. This area is called the 6th worst area for crime in the country. This road had 11 crimes in April, reported in April. So these are really serious issues. So one of the questions I think we ought to ask is for a mapping exercise to take place, mapping crime against the prevalence of HIMOs. I think if we had the answer to all those questions, then I think I would be happy for the committee to make a decision, but we don't have the answer to them. So I think the best thing to do would be to defer the decision. Thank you.
Mr. Robson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't have the information in terms of if there are any outstanding investigations ongoing to unauthorised or licensed HIMOs. That's something we can provide, but the data of the slides and to members now just show of expressing the information we've got at hand, which just comply with the SPD. I think the statement with regards to crime or associated crime with HIMOs is a little bit unjust and unfair to assume that HIMO or identity of HIMOs will automatically go hand in hand with crime. Yeah. I mean, that is something I don't think really should be considered by the data amended by members. Thank you, Chair.
Could I just also pick up the points out? I think the comment was very many illegal HIMOs. There have been no illegal HIMOs reported. There were no objections to the application from the area the signage was posted and consultation took place on other applications in other parts of Northampton. The issue of HIMOs is raised and is investigated in part of the application when a specific address is made known to the planning officer and enforcement team. So there is nothing known on the system to do with illegal HIMOs in the vicinity of this site.
I think there's some slightly easier way of actually explaining why I don't think members should defer this, which is that, so effectively the private sector housing team are giving us information as they do with all of these applications in terms of the number of HMOs that they have identified. And then, as is explained in page 72, officers have determined this on the basis that there's currently 6 out of 92, and that will increase to 7. So if it turns out that 10 metres away there's an unauthorised HMO, what would then happen is we can request a retrospective application, and that might take it to 8. And if there's another unauthorised HMO, but the way the policy works is at the point you exceed 10%, you can then take an alternative approach. So that's the way the policy works in effect, and that's the way that all of these applications have been determined, because obviously there are quite a lot of regular applications in Northampton Heads where we have the policy, the guidance, so that we have a framework to determine these applications. So if it is felt that within a 50 metre radius there are unauthorised HMOs, officers can investigate that. As I say, deal with those applications, and if the 10% gets exceeded, then at that point we have an issue with the development of this contract planning policy.
I understand to what James said. The reason that you have HMO applications coming before the committee or being subject to planning applications is because in if there wasn't an Article 4 direction on most of Northampton preventing change of use to HMOs, it would be something that could be done to permitted development plans. So the fact that you have a policy that allows 10%, yeah, that is 90% below what is potentially possible if there wasn't an Article 4 direction. So I think that members should be aware of that.
Councillor Baldridge. Yeah, my question really is this a material planning consideration, because there seems to be, this is an application for a legal HMO, which in some ways should be encouraged under the court. And the fact there are legal ones there, that's a separate issue. We've got to prove they're illegal and they've got to obviously be inspected and that. So I don't see how we can actually refuse on the basis of any policy matters here. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. That's very good.
Well, I would carry on that theme, when you look at the reason for the those, there is no basic planning reason. So I think that would be careful. I hear what councillors doing and they're concerned, but the policies are the policies, and we are not here to debate policy. So for me, we are told that if it's all a planning application, we need to have a valid planning reason. If that is the reason for the coding, I do not see any valid planning reason. So can I be, because if there is a planning, a valid planning reason, we should be aware of it. But is what I have in front of me, I cannot see, and I will ask that people, except if you told me otherwise, that we go with the advice.
Yeah, thank you. So does anyone wish to make a proposal on this?
No, can I speak?
Yes.
I don't like looking at things I don't understand. What I'm asking, on that map, what indicates the location of an existing HMO? At first I assumed it's green, but the green is not in the key. And in the key, I think it says HMOs identified by NBC red diamond, but I can't see any red diamonds. So what is indicating the location of existing HMOs? And while you think about that, the relationship between HMOs and crime, is that something we could ask one of the scrutiny committees to look at, or planning policy?
Chair, yes, it's for a different forum.
Yes.
Essentially, you don't have that
Yeah.
information over it before you make any determination. Sorry.
Okay. Can we make that request, sorry?
Thank you.
So in response, I'm afraid these plans are produced for us, and you'll see them in other applications. So the green stars and the green circles near the dotted red line or within it are either HMOs that have got permission or are licensed. Permissions are starred, licensed. Can be a green circle, but essentially it's those colours. Red circles and red stars are indications of where there's been a planning refusal or an unlicensed or HMO in the past. So I hope that assists.
Are you insistent?
I am. It's simply that the key then bears no relationship to the plan, and there's a number of chances of plans.
We want to ask that can be ordered in the future presentation to these countries which you can.
Everyone else should be ashamed of themselves for not asking, because obviously nobody else understood.
Does anyone wish to speak? Someone like to?
Yeah, I would just like to say really that, you know, I think that this Cool Street area is now part of a conservation area. For the boot and shoe industry, and you know, the hopes are that it will be continually improved over the years. There's a lot of residents that own their own properties and have been living there for a long time. And I have to say, it doesn't sit comfortably with me at all to approve an application for an HMO. although I do accept that we don't,
Councillor Bridgman.
Could I propose that we actually accept the officer's recommendation with regards to this approval of this agent?
Thank you very much. Do we have a second there? Councillor Bambridge, does anyone wish to speak before we vote?
So,
Councillor Irving Swift.
yes, Shannon, I did ask a question and I didn't think, maybe I am mistaken. I asked the reason for the referral. Where is the planning reason in that referral? Or am I completely, because yesterday we had three in general on another planning meeting. And it was always the same. We have been told, so maybe the solicitor can help us.
Sorry, this application was called in, that we called in by President Stone, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? Chair. Within the HLO SPD documentation, in coming up with the 50-metre radius and the 10%, there is discussion about community resilience and transients and all these other effects. So in the sense that it relates to the SPD, to me, it's a valid planning reason.
Thank you so much. I have a big issue.
Thank you, Chair. The full reason for calling is that this was called in by Councillor Stone as the application in an area of high transients. We need to be supporting long-term residents to build community resilience. Another high mode would negatively impact the local needs, and that is the text of the reason for it. Chair.
May we now move to the vote? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. On this one, I want to vote against the report, so saying, I think Councillor Stone makes a valid point that she's only asking for deferment. The reason why she needs to know, we need to know the full information before we vote on something, because there may be some being investigated, but officers may have not picked it up yet. Because as we know, the private sector housing is very, they're overwhelmed with casework and the short on staff as well. So the time, do we know the time scale when a property is reported? How long does it take for us officers to investigate?
Are you talking about the enforced defilement?
Yes, yeah, illegal HMOs.
Well, I don't think that's much.
Chair, you just got to be very careful because you don't have that information. It's not really relevant to determination of this application. If there are illegal landlords, if there are, they are subject to information. Your officers have extended that report that we learned the threshold of this application. They're still fall within the eligibility criteria. So beyond that, there is no evidence that you have before you that there are illegal owners that would require you to declare this application. You simply don't have that information for you, so you just need to be very careful about that.
We have a proposal, you councillor Cricknall, it's been seconded by councillor Bambridge. All those in favour, please show. Those against. Those abstentions. That's right, thank you. Thank you very much. We now move into the three applications of Whittlebury. Which covers, so you present doing one presentation for three applications, we don't find them separately, is that right?
It's instrumental. Yeah. Can that often operate for the dictionary to Whittlebury? I'm not aware, I've not had any representations made to me about this. I don't feel that there's anything constraining me from participating. If that's okay with you.
Yes. Exactly, it's in regards to this application, that's saying I have no indication of any residents that they object to it. And also, if I may say, in the area relative I certainly haven't predetermined any of the application for this time.
Really regret the closure of the bakery.
Sorry.
I'm nearly regret the closure of the bakery, but that's unrelated.
Very good bakery.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yes, so this presentation covers items 12, 13 and 14 on the agenda, all of which relates to Home Farm Churchway in Whittlebury. Outline planning permission was granted in March 2021, the demolition of the existing buildings on the site, most of which have actually been in business use many years rather than agricultural. And in their place, the erection of 14 dwellings. The outline permission also approved details of access, which belong to Churchway on the northern boundary of the site. Taking each item in turn, item 12 seeks to discharge the requirements of condition 3 on the outline planning permission, which requires the submission and approval of design guidance. The reason the discharge of condition application is before committee is because that design guidance fundamentally influences and constrains the reserve matters application, which is item 13. Item 14 is a request from the applicant for the council to enter into a deed of variation on the extant section 106 agreement to remove the obligations to provide affordable housing on the site and the obligations to pay financial contributions towards primary education, early years education and libraries. And the applicant has submitted a private review proposal to support this. First, take you through the design guidance, which is the condition discharge application. This, in accordance with the requirements of the condition, this includes site analysis, which appraises the site in its context, its surroundings, its connectivity, views, etc. And indicates the proposed approach to development, which comprises two different character areas. The north part, which is more of a village or domestic character, and then the southern part, you can see in the top left corner, there's a plan with the sort of appears pinky blue, sorry, pinky red and blue. So the lower blue area is more of a farm or agricultural type of character to it. The general form seems to be fairly organic, predominantly two-story. And then moving on to the building forms, again referencing local examples of vernacular domestic architecture, agricultural architecture, and also Georgian farmhouse architecture. There's then a section on materials, so roofing, which includes limestone, red brick, some elements of black timber cladding, and then for the roofs there is slate, plain tiles, and can tiles, and then locally appropriate means of fenestration. And then landscaping details in terms of surface treatments and boundary enclosure, so predominantly hard landscaping features. The details are deliberately light touch, as that considered proportionate for development of this scale, and also because the reserve matters has run largely concurrently with the condition application, meaning it's been a slightly less strategic significance as it hasn't proceeded, fully proceeded the reserve matters application. So in terms of the reserve matters application, which is item 13, the scheme seeking consent comprises 14 units. As I said, there's the relatively organic layout of buildings. The southern half is agricultural, creating sort of a farmyard enclosure. And then it's slightly more, yes, ad hoc arrangement for the village element in the northern part of the site. The scheme includes 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 bedroom houses. There's no intrusive overlooking of existing neighbouring property or between proposed dwellings, with the exception of one window in unit 5, which is the large property in sort of in the middle of the site. That one of the conditions on the recommendation is that that window is obscured so that it doesn't intrude upon the privacy of the neighbouring property adjacent to it to the north. Parking within the site requires a minimum of 2 spaces, driveway spaces per unit, plus garaging for each. There's a mixture of high quality boundary treatments, including estate railings and brick and stone walls. One key aspect of the proposal is that the internal roads are proposed to remain private and unadopted in order to create a successful aesthetic that would deliver the appropriate informal organic character that the development seeks to achieve. The layout does not fully comply with local highway authority's adoption criteria, although it is demonstrated to be functional and safe in a practical sense. One of the conditions on the recommendation, in light of it remaining private road, is that it remains ungated, so as much create a gated community. Within the layout, you can see the fields to the left-hand side contains a drainage basin. This is part of the drainage for the site, and is in the location as agreed as part of the outline planning permission. And then within that paddock area, there is some additional landscaping tree planting indicated. So in terms of the house types, just taking through these, the first few house types are agricultural in character, so you can see there is predominantly stone face, but agricultural shape and form, and also fenestration which echoes a sort of agricultural character to it. This is the second unit, sorry, this is plots 2 and 3, so they would be combined in a large sort of threshing barn style. Unit 4, which stands next to them, again, similar styles, but clearly very agricultural in character. And the largest plot on the site, which is a sort of Georgian farmhouse style. This is 3-storey, it's the only 3-storey building on the development. And then we move into the village, or the northern half of the site. There's a pair of semi-detached properties here. And then a terrace of 5 properties. And then at the front of the site, there's 2 units that are sort of linked attached. Turning then to item 14, which is the variation, just to run through this a little. The section 106, tied to the outline permission, the report sets out the policy requirements for developments to deliver necessary infrastructure to mitigate their impact. The original section 106 did include a policy compliant provision of 50% affordable housing, which would have been 7 units. The normal full suite of financial contributions relating to early years education, primary education, libraries, refuse and recycling, and fire hydrants. The applicant has submitted a detailed viability appraisal which shows that due to a range of factors, it would not be viable to provide any of the affordable housing or any of the developer contributions. Officers with extensive experience in viability appraisals have assessed the applicant's submission and concur with its findings. Officers have negotiated with the applicant to retain the smallest of the financial contributions relating to refuse and recycling, i.e. provision wheelie bins and fire hydrants. This is partly to ensure that the original agreement does retain some substance. The rest of the detailing is set out in the report, but in summary, officers conclude that notwithstanding the conflicts with policies H2 and LH8, the developments on the basis of the evidence provided would remain compliant with policies INF 1 and paragraph 58 of the MPF. And would remain in overall accordance with the development plan. So with regards to updates, there are no updates on any of these 3 items. The recommendation is that the delegated authority be granted to approve items 12 and 13. So just remind ourselves that's the condition application and the reserved matters application, to approve those subject to the conditions outlined in the reports, and the delegated authority be granted to officers to agree the deed of variation requested in that item 14.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis. We have Mr. David Piper, the agent for the applicant. Now, I gather that you've registered 3 times at the, although you may have only arrived with 1 script. So you must
right with 3 script, but I promise not to go on for 9 minutes. If I can just break them down into the 3, that's easy.
So do you want to do them in 1 run through?
I will, but I'll tell you when I go on to the next section. If I may.
Yes, okay. And so when we move to the debate, then we will have our debate on the whole thing. But we will be voting separately on each of the applications.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Chair. So if I may start with the design code, discharge planning condition. As you're aware, this is the first of 3 items to be discussed this evening in respect to the redeveloped Home Farm Business Park, which is located on the edge of Whittlesbury and relates to the discharge planning condition on the outline consent, which requires a design code to be submitted prior to the reserve map being approved. At the heart of the proposal, as acknowledged during the determination of the earlier outline application, is the fact that the existing business park contains a range of utilitarian buildings located in a prominent position on the gateway into the village. Aside from the fact that the buildings do not meet modern standards or expectations and are a detractor within the landscape, the existing access is unsuited to large commercial vehicles, which the existing uses that attract, and on occasion, such vehicles get lost and find themselves routing through the village itself, much to the detriment of annoyance of existing residents. When outline planning permission was granted, members were rightly concerned that despite commitments to deliver a high quality development, which respects the rural vernacular, a third-party developer could come along at the reserve matter stage and propose a scheme which does not align with these values. As such, the conditioning questions imposed upon the consent to protect the council's position and ensure that the design philosophy promised at the outline stage would be followed through. Prior to the preparation of the proposals, which is to be discussed as part of the next item on the agenda, we've engaged with your officers with a view to agreeing a general approach to design, which has not altered since our earlier discussions at the outline stage. My client is committed to delivering a development of the highest quality, which uses traditional reclaimed materials and adopts architectural detailing, which respects the local vernacular. Some of you may be aware of this business park at Perry Hill and the exceptionally high standard that has been achieved there, and this is very much the benchmark which is to be achieved as part of these proposals. The design code document has therefore been prepared in parallel with reserve matters proposals and with a high level of collaboration with your officers, which we're extremely grateful for. Your officers invested significant amount of time with us to achieve a quality of development which I don't believe is regularly seen within this country, and which I believe is absolutely critical for this location. The level of detail considered as part of these proposals is drilled down to the minutiae, including specification of streetlights, gutters, and ridge tiles. Similar attention has been also paid to landscaping, the comprehensive landscaping scheme complementing the proposals. I shan't discuss the specifics of the scheme at this stage, but to state that the design code which is before you aligns with the scheme which is presented in the next item and is a product of 2 years of collaboration with your officer. We very much hope you consider the standards of design advocated with the information provided to be satisfactory and would appreciate positive determination on this matter. Thank you. Okay, so this is now in relation to the matters. I'm trying to keep this brief. As is discussed in your Oxford report, these proposals provide 14 new dwellings, with 9 of these providing 2 and 3 bedrooms and a remainder of 4, 5 and 6 bedrooms, thereby speaking to meet a range of different needs. The design approach that's been adopted is as per the design document that you have just considered, and will offer a development to the highest quality, which will significantly improve the appearance of the arrival into the village from the west compared to the existing situation. All statutory consultees have been satisfied, with the exception of highways officers, and I should pick up on that point briefly with you. The proposed access into the site is as was agreed at the outline stage and has since been ratified by a road safety audit that has been commissioned by my client. There are therefore no safety concerns associated with the proposals. However, a decision has been taken in consultation with the planning officers that it would not be desirable to construct the proposed internal access using standard materials stipulated by the Highway Authority, as this would undermine the overall quality of the development and would result in an unnecessary urban feeling. In geometry terms, the proposed access road meets Highway Authority standards, and their objection relates to the choice of certain materials of the road, which will be more expensive than standard materials, and therefore they would not wish to inherit the liability for this through the adoption process. However, as confirmed within the committee report, there is no requirement for development to be built to adoptable standards, and there are other recent developments within the authority which have chosen to take this approach. A management company will be set up which ensures that the road and external areas are maintained in perpetuity, so there's no exception or expectation or cost falling upon the Highway Authority or the public purse. As your officers have stated in this report, this was discussed at the outline stage and it's respectfully requested that you support this approach to ensure that traditional character to the development that we're seeking to achieve is not diminished through the use of standard surfacing and curb specifications. As part of the proposals, a new footpath is to be provided through the site, which links into the new permissive pathway through the field to the west, down an existing track and linking into existing footpath network, thereby creating a new circular route for residents to enjoy. This could be the key point which I would bring to your attention, and so remember the merit of proposals and the level of work that has gone into ensuring that the design quality has been optimised. Happy to answer questions you might have.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you. So this relates to the viability appraisal that has been submitted. So as has been the case with matters of design, early discussion with your office on viability taken by part of the preparation of certain matters, with full transparency on the financials of the proposed development being provided throughout. The COVID pandemic has seen a significant impact on costs of materials and general construction costs, and therefore prior to submitting these proposals, their overall viability has been assessed to establish what developer contributions can viably be provided and to ensure that proposals are fully deliverable. For those of you that have reviewed the viability document, the projected profit levels from the development are estimated at circa 6.78%, which is significantly below the target profit level of 20%, as recognised by the West Northamptonshire Joint Planning Unit, as well as national guidance. Notwithstanding this, my client still wishes to progress the development proposals, as even though it might not be an attractive proposition to many developers, he sees the value in bringing the scheme forward and the improvements it will bring to the area. It is also hoped that he can achieve some cost savings through his reclamation business and sourcing materials, but ultimately this scheme will not get close to the target profit levels that the majority of those within the development industry would require. Notwithstanding requests to remove affordable housing and other developer contributions stipulated with under 106, the proposal will continue to provide contributions towards fire hydrants and refuse and recycling, as well as making the necessary still payments. The viability information has been presented, has been scrutinised by officers within the council who are experts in viability, and the conclusions of the report presented have been fully agreed with. Whilst it is appreciated that such requests to consider viability should be the exception rather than the rule, the case presented has been considered by your officers to be robust, and it is hoped that the other benefits of bringing this scheme forward are afforded weight and this modification will 106 approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicely done. Are there any questions?
Councillor Robinson.
Yes, and I hope it's for you, it might be for the planners. You say that the road is not going to be adopted. So, and if the road is not adopted, are all the houses, are they going to have to bring their rubbish bin at the entrance of the development, or do you have an agreement that the rubbish collection will be collected?
Yes, the intention is if you were able to look at the layout plan, the first bit of the road into the site, whilst not being built to highway standards in terms of the materials, from a geometry point of view, has been designed such the refuge wagon can enter and turn into the site. So as part of the application, we'll be looking for, as part of the proposals rather, we'll be looking for residents to enter into a management agreement where they will pay a fee. And we will also be happy to accept any diminished liability upon the bin wagons, etc., such that if they were to break a curb or such like, it wouldn't fall upon them to bear the cost of that. So we have discussed that point with your officers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Control.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the private road, who actually maintains it and how the residents pay for it?
It's very much the same as you have with many residential developments where there's public open space and communal gardens and so on. There are companies that basically take on the responsibilities of that management function, and they would take a service charge from occupiers of the properties. So you see this in quite a lot of blocks of apartments, for example, where often the car park area for where you've got 30, 40 flats won't be adopted. It will be governed by a management company, and the individual apartment owners will pay money on a monthly or quarterly basis, and that company will take responsibility for the ongoing maintenance of the site, and that's exactly the same as what we're looking at here.
Just a final question with regards to, I'm sure the officer would be able to answer this, is with regards to the sewer bank, how much is it and where does it go to?
So the silver payment as we calculate at the moment is in the region of £350,000. So that would be I need to check, but I believe well that would either, I can't remember whether that's a single lump payment or whether that would be broken up into stage payments, but that would come into West Northampton Council, and then the authority would be able to use that for delivering strategic infrastructure balances.
Any other views? Thank you, sir. Okay, sorry, I'll come back to you.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the profit percentage. So thank you very much for providing that information. It's very useful. So my question was also about the management of the those residents will be paying quite a hefty council tax. Why can't they expect the council to provide those services for them? The reason I'm asking is because there is the national scandal, isn't there, attached to unadopted roads and maintenance arrangements. And there certainly is a lot of controversy and concern in West Northants about the exercise of those maintenance agencies and the escalating costs that they're passing on to residents. It seems to me that in that scenario, residents are paying double, and I don't understand the rationale behind that. Why would we have an unadopted road when an adopted road would mean that the residents get their due service from the local authority? I really don't understand that.
Thank you.
That was a question.
Speaker.
Yeah. Question. Yeah. Well.
No, I thought legal officer might have come in on that, but no, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, that this is, planning is a balancing act at the end of the day, and we are faced with the question as to whether or not we want an adoptable standard road that's constructed of normal tarmac pattern in concrete curves and so on, or whether or not we want to actually create something of high quality here that takes a slightly higher specification and so on, which unfortunately the highway authority would not want the liability of. And I think sort of through consultation with your officers, on balance, it's considered that in this instance, this is the better option for this location, and will ensure that the quality that we're trying to deliver in the houses is reflected in the hard surfacing materials as well. As for the scandals that you refer to in terms of management companies, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I'm not aware of the scandals that you refer to, but a management company managing external areas is not an uncommon arrangement in any sort of new development for new residential properties.
Chair, it helps. You management companies don't think very residents as members or co-opting members on the management company. Sometimes that does actually happen, principally in terms of where you have communal areas, so not flats and others, communal areas that are shared that have been maintained and managed. I could also include car park and some open space as well, including perhaps some structural landscaping as well.
Okay.
Could I just also offer that we would be happy to share the details of the management company when we're at that stage with the local authority for their sort of scrutiny, as it were. There's, you know, we're very happy to go down that route of that provides additional comfort.
Again, Chair, it helps the committee. Certainly, often you will find a requirement for a management company is almost a standing item on a 106 obligation. You may think that's the appropriate way forward.
The planning officers, if you sort it out.
I was. The matters being raised are actually ones I would actually look to the legal officer for his advice on. So I'm happy that the legal officer is saying that best way to deal with an additional head of term. Chairman, is it possible to, is the speaker saying that they're happy to agree with this additional head of term?
I don't have a problem with that, no.
So how do we say that?
Well, the councillors raised a concern. The legal officer has offered a way of leveraging that concern. The speaker appears to be saying they're happy to take that forward. So I don't would propose
So if that was wished, you could make a proposal to the committee for that to take place. Have we held any further questions?
Still happen again.
No, no, we'd like that.
Right, okay. Well, can I have a question to the office?
Well,
Yes, okay. As long as
after
we
council.
still are.
Yeah, I still want the question to the agent, please. The chimneys, do they have flues in them or they're all taped ones?
To be honest, I don't know the answer, but we haven't looked at the internal specification, but I think based upon the design standards that we can achieve here, you know, they're not going to be your traditional fiberglass chimneys that go on modern developments. So there'd be no reason for not to be able to accommodate flues.
Thank you. It's just that it really angers me to see the waste of money and materials going into things. It's like putting an appendix on things. They don't do anything. And as you say, the quality ones, you tend to get problems from sitting on the roofs at a later stage. Anyway, thank you.
Yes, if I may, to the officers. Highways are concerned about surface water drainage onto the highway. I note that your comment to the local flood authority is, in fact, that's already dealt with. So can I assume that your comment under flood applies to highways worry as well?
Yes, I mean, surface water flooding is dealt with through conditions on the outline consent, and there is a drainage strategy within that, and obviously as part of discharging those conditions when we get to them. Those matters will be picked up by them at that point.
Okay, and it does sound to me as if the nature of the development and the finishes are probably more permanent. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've got that impression. So there should be less runoff.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it can depend on exactly what the substructure is. You know, even if you're using pavers, there's different ways of achieving different levels of permeability. So, but that will be factored in as part of this development condition that will be detailed assessment submission.
Right. Highways are also concerned about the retaining wall should satisfy them. Can that be made a condition that highways be satisfied?
So there is actually also a condition on the outline consent, which does require further submission details of what it is, earlier. Retaining wall condition 8. So further details of the retaining wall being submitted to an approved in writing by the local planning authority. So that's again a hurdle for them, to get ready before we commence.
You've already done that. Yeah, and then it just seems if the question of not being adopted, highways resist proposals for more than 5 dwellings on a private road. Here we've got 14. How do we reconcile that? Are we just ignoring highways resistance? Or is there a rationale?
I think obviously as the agent said, within planning, there is sometimes conflicting considerations. So you will have, on the one hand, the compliance with adopted standards, and then on the other hand, you will have things like aesthetics and delivering a certain character of development. And I think that with any situation, in some instances, one will prevail over the other. Certainly, if we were dealing with a more urban development or SUV development, then you would expect standards to be complied with in order to achieve the high standard of modern development that was efficient and easy, relatively cheap to maintain. I think the difference when we're dealing potentially with more smaller scale developments in rural areas where sometimes complying with those standards can lead to an urbanizing effect that actually is quite incongruous with the character of the area in which they're located. There's potentially a play off in those factors.
And you're asking us, well, in effect, to accept that play off in this case.
Yes, I mean, I think to comply with highway standards, there would be, as mentioned before, issues over choice of servicing material, but there's other factors as well, such as having service strips on both sides of the road, which insert constraints on design, which would, if you did apply them in this instance, would have a not insignificant effect on the proposal that we have before us.
There's a comment somewhere that 14 in this context, 14 dwellings were approved at outline stage. Am I right in thinking, though, that at outline stage we didn't know that it was going to be proposed that this internal road be not adopted? Or did we?
Off the top of my head, I can't recall, but certainly the outline stage, the element which was was the point of access and the design of that access and the visibility of that access. There was no formal approval of any strategy. I mean, whether I wasn't the case officer with that application, however, it was discussed, but certainly the scope of the outline application was just dealing primarily with the actual access itself on Churchway.
Mr. Roger, sorry, I can actually give a precise answer. I've actually got a copy of the 2019 Planning Committee report. NCC highways objection and then provision of a private driveway to serve 14 dwellings contrary to NCC policy.
Right.
So in effect, the outline was approved by Planning Committee on the 16th of May 2019, and it was in the report that WNC Highways objected at that point in time to a private driveway.
So it was known at that time.
It was definitely.
Okay.
We seem to have moved us off from questions to the speaker. But still on questions to the speaker. So are there any more questions for the speaker? Would you return to your seat?
Thank you.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the fences, you've stated there that there possibly going to be agricultural equipment going to the site. Is that so?
So, through you, Chair, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that was a comment that came from the Highway Authority, that it was a concern of theirs that there would be agricultural traffic through the site to access the land that's to the west, because there is an access gate on there. I think, I hope I've made it clear in the report that essentially that access is not, agricultural in the day-to-day sense of big tractors coming through all the time. It is purely for maintenance access, because the lands to the west will be managed in a more amenity type of stuff, or rather than being purely agriculture. So it will be very infrequent, the odd vehicle. I think the other point to remember is that the land does sort of slope away quite significantly to that side as well. So you wouldn't want big agricultural traffic trying to get up that hill. So yes, I think that's.
Councillor Farquhar.
Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Rogers has answered the question. Mine is exactly the same. Under 8.14 page 93, they do not intend to comply with highway adoption standards, assuming the LAA reviews it without the road, expect it to remain. I prefer to see like a condition that will be, because we could end up picking up the cost there, I think, if people came to WNC and said, right, we want to have you adopt this road. Here is quite clearly saying they're not going to do that. So I'd like to see something that actually reinforces that we're not going to get costs of 5 or 10 years down the road. And the second one, that's to Daniel Tallis, please. Just wait for this document.
That's it.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you said on the 106s, it will go to WNC, 300 and something thousand. Yes, still. This is Dean's Hanger, I think, I'm right in saying that. Have they got a neighbourhood plan? Because not all of that money will go to WNC, it should go to the parish. 25% with, 15 without.
Right, well, it's Dean's Hanger ward, but the neighbourhood plans relate primarily to parishes as areas. I don't, off the top of my head, believe that.
I'm told it's sorry, I'm told it's Middleborough,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Sorry, I don't know.
No, I don't believe that's fine.
So we'll get a percentage of that.
The parish councils are entitled to an element of
15%.
Yeah, regardless of the presence of a neighbourhood plan, but yes.
Thank you. Just didn't want the money going in one direction.
Yeah, well, it's fine. Councillor Bambury. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to say that the quality of the Perry Hill development, which I know very well indeed, is really outstanding, and the use of materials there. I think any road they produce is going to outlast anything you would see the for 100 years. If that's beside the point. My question though is on 106 money. And recently we've had the annual meetings of various parishes, and I've attended 6 of those, and every single one there was a mention of electric charging points in villages. And parish councils are getting a bit concerned that they're going to have to somehow pay and supply these things. Certainly there's a need everywhere for public available charging points, and yet I don't hear in 106 agreements contributions towards those. Is this something we can do, or is it something we need to talk about?
It's it's not currently part of planning policy, planning policy. There's a requirement for new developments to provide EV charging capability within, well, certainly within former South Northants area, to provide EV charging on plot for new dwellings. But in terms of that community provision, I don't believe there's anything in the council's current policy that would justify asking for that specifically as a standalone item in section 106. Whereas obviously, hypothetically, still money is hypothetically something which could be utilised for that, I would suggest.
I think it's something that needs to be discussed because it's not long from now where we're going to only be able to buy new electric cars. And it's going to be a real problem for people, particularly ones who haven't got the property that they can plug into to be able to use those vehicles. In fact, we stopped up at last night briefing for those intended. Yeah. Right, if we're done with questions to the officers, are we? Yeah. Okay. We move on to a debate then. Who would like to kick it off?
I would like to go and propose one by one the item. If the board members do not want to be the proposal and the second.
If there's anyone who wishes to speak before we listen to the proposal, can you speak now?
I've looked at this particular proposal in depth before I came to the committee and give the same. I think it's pretty good for everyone. There's also knowing the location of the applications. I think it would be yes, very acceptable in this and also to the other as well.
Well, if you're ready to proceed to that position, I'll ask Richard to take us through how we will vote on any proposals that are made. So we shall ask Richard to come in now, or if the one, that's the boundary. I'd just like to say, living in Silverstone and going using that road every day, currently as you come up the hill into Silverstone and Withby Road, you've got what looks like the remains of an old army camp with sort of old buildings and things. It's not at all attractive, it's quite a pretty village. And this will be an enhancement, certainly for the entry point in the village. And I think the quality and appearance of these houses is something that's to be applauded. And, it's very attractive looking development. How's that?
Yeah, I would say that. Oh, yeah, please, I'll second that. I think it looks a very good scheme. And I propose that we, one of the concerns I had was managing the company, and the agent is happy to share the company detail with ourselves. So I think it's a good scheme, and we should, I'll second what council have already said, and I propose that we accept one by one all the fee, that's
So we have a proposer and the seconder. I'll second. Yeah, okay. Right. Yes. We'll go through that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we'll have 3 separate votes on each item. So we'll do with item 12 first, which is for condition 3, design guidelines, outline application, etc. For Church Road. So could I have a proposal for our family?
We have one question. You discuss with the section 106, at which point of the proposal? Okay, thank you. So we are not confused.
I will clarify
We have a proposal that's been seconded for the first application. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Thank you. Those again. Thank you.
Okay, so item 13, which is the reserve matters application, consent 14 dwellings, including layout, scale, appearance, landscape, and access, other than those will be approved by the commission. Moving to Church Road, brief or redevelopment. This is B1, B2, B residential development, lots of 14 dwellings. Could I have a closing price of 13?
Richard.
Sounds good. Teacher.
All those in favour of the proposal, please show. Those against. Abstentions, no.
Okay. Item 14, deed of variation relating to section 106, planning application S 2019-0037 MAO, the outline application access included for the redevelopment of B1, B2, within 8 units and residential development across 14 dwellings, including that additional obligation of the details of the management company shall be shared with the local authority. Can I propose that item, please?
Councillor Conway, and
I'll second it.
yes,
Yeah.
all those in favour of the proposal? Hang on,
So we just want to clarify what members are voting for in terms of what is being added to the
respect that.
to the heads of terms, because, sorry, just making the point that these officers need to be absolutely clear what we're going away and negotiating subsequently with the developers there. Sorry to be difficult. We're not.
I suggest something we should be delegating.
Essentially, yeah, something you should be delegating. I've got what I believe the provision is getting on the bottom, what the requirement will be for management company. If I'm honest, these are the standard provisions. So you'll be asking members to approve to firstly add an additional item to the applicant developer and provide details of the management company to be approved. And then management company in this sector of the road maintenance, and then provisions, ongoing provisions for maintenance in perpetuity to the management company. And any other details delegated to the director of the planning will take into necessary.
Do we need to reform us, our proposal by now?
I think you need to propose it first to add it to the actual
We make that additional.
recommendation, and then you vote for it, and then vote on the whole thing.
Okay. So that's it. Right. Would you like to?
This question.
Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, when I saw James and then comparing, because the applicant says that the profit at 7%. So section 106, I don't think the applicant was proposing more money for that. So where do we stand? Because if we are something that is a bit more, it will be always with an associated cost. So that is where I am a bit confused.
So if it helps, just to clarify further.
Yeah.
Don't believe we're asking for additional money, just asking to have control over the set of management maintenance of this company, who are going to be the participants, essentially because it's become a legal entity. And then how, with that kind of what arrangements will be put in place in terms of managing what will be the private of the estate in perpetuity.
Councillor Manwood, there was talk earlier about involvement of residents in that company. Can we include that in the proposal?
We can certainly, yes, we can simply because all I say what we're asking for is to follow that process. No, they have to provide something for approval, and then there will be a negotiation. So as I mentioned earlier, there are standard provision for separate management companies. And the council won't allow anything to happen unless they further improve that management company.
Okay. Is there anything the finance wish to add?
I just think the important thing is that everyone's clear of what's being voted on. So that was effectively the point I was making, because I was thinking, well, if I'm not 100% clear, then it's quite possible that nobody's not 100% clear. But I think I'm slightly clearer now.
Okay, can we roll back on the
Thank you, Chair. So that's okay. Item 14 is the proposal and is with the additional obligation within the details of the management company shall be shared with the local authority. details from the management company in respect of road maintenance, ongoing maintenance and perpetuity for the management company, the involvement of residents in the operation of the management company, and any other details necessary.
Can we add, residents and board members, maybe, possibly, councillors?
Single chat, but I would like it, because we have, the council will have sufficient control to say how they can work with it, to be said, we, you are the participant.
I'm happy with that proposal. I'd like to propose it.
Oh, right.
Okay, so,
Okay, so anyone wish to speak before we vote on it?
Does it really mean to say that before the management company is appointed, it has to be approved by this council?
Yes, well, we'll put some kind of safeguards to require by a certain trigger point, the approval of details submitted to the council of the setup of the management company, and then we'll require the setup of the management company, and then it's kind of longevity.
Well, I find as dealings before with regards to the maintenance companies, and they tend to be a little bit, yeah, they just go with that.
No, absolutely, but it depends how you cover them up and one of those things.
Exactly.
Would you like to include those details in the sort of?
Yes, I do.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this? Right, we have a second, please.
I was thinking, I have seconded it.
so proposed by councillor Stone, seconded by councillor Platt.
All those in favour, please vote. Those against? No, no abstention. Very much. Oh, you got there, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Item 15 is an appeals update, and the recommendation is to nobody is reporting.
Agree.
Do we have any questions?
No.
No. We agree, right? Okay. Now advise you that as there is no urgent business for item 16, then I'll vote the meeting as. 27.